Hey, welcome to Creepy Puppets Presents. I'm your creepy puppeteer, Tommy. So I recorded the PowerPoint you're going to see before my catastrophic computer failure last week, but I thought I'd record a new introduction to it. Even though the audio quality is much worse in the apartment, my brand new webcam, brand new machine, and amazing lighting, so much better than the basement bookcase set, is really great. So the problem I was having was that I was taking 2 or 3 weeks to edit videos in Blender. And, that's because I have a full-time STEM schedule. So I just don't have the time to edit in Blender. But these videos, those which are recorded with a screen grab or those which are recorded with the camera, those I can edit relatively quickly in Windows Video Editor. And so if I want to produce quality content quickly, if I wanted to do, 2 videos a week, which are of good quality, instead of, one video every 3 weeks, then I needed to change the content to make it fit the workflow that I'm capable of. I really like the style of YouTube channels like Viced Rhino, for example, and you can see the influence of that style. But, these guys are putting out 2 or 3 videos a week, and they're full-timers. And to do a video of that quality takes me 2 or 3 weeks, then that's just not feasible. So I also like talking to the camera so much more than I like just sitting in a room and screaming into the void on the microphone. So, and then the other thing, of course, is that pauses, breaths, when it's just audio, you really pick up on that. And so it's a lot more editing work to do when you're doing voiceover. So it's much easier to do this style. And I think I'm going to restructure so that I have everything sort of, all of my science and spirituality content under one sort of show identity with some other stuff around the sides. So I have more stuff on that coming in the future. So turning to the topic of today's video. If you've seen my video entitled Pseudoscience is Probably Not Real, I think that's what it's called. Anyway, you know that I did a lot of research on astrology. I taught myself how to do medieval astrology. Despite my being a believer in spirits, I was not a believer in astrology because I'd only encountered fortune cookie astrology that you get in newspapers. But as I learned the medieval system, I came to realize that there is power there. And so in 2018, the summer of 2018, I did a horoscope on the US midterm elections, and I predicted the blue wave. So, with election 2020 only 2 weeks away, I thought I'd do it again. And having done it again, I'm going to share those results with you now. For some reason, the Xbox game bar, which I usually use to do screen records, just wasn't working. So I'm going to go with this record slideshow bit. Anyway, I'm going to stay politically neutral in this talk, but after the medieval astrology predicted the election so well last time, and with 3 weeks to go until the election this year, I thought I might as well do it again. So, if you've seen my video on pseudoscience and astrology, you know that I think astrology was a primitive form of statistical regression, comparing human events to cycles of time, and that, the medievals didn't possess an advanced knowledge of statistics, and so they encoded all this mythology about energy and power and rulership around it to explain what was going on. And this would explain why, after astrology fell out of favor in the 1600s, 1700s, and then was revived in the 19th century, a lot of that information was lost. It's why sun sign astrology, the kind you get in newspapers, is complete garbage, whereas stuff from the from the medieval period you can actually use to generate some useful predictions. So that's sort of our working hypothesis, because I know that skeptics are going to be uh, watching and, being their usual selves. Anyway, so here's the steps of how it's done. We're going to pick a time and a place that's going to represent the event we want to study. Now, in 2018, I used Washington, D.C. at 8 p.m. And so for this election, I'm going to use Washington, D.C. at 8 p.m. on November 3rd. We're going to draw a horoscope for this event, and then we are going to find out, what houses represent which parties. We'll find out what sign is in those houses, and then we're going to use a rulership table to find out what planet rules those signs. And then we're going to compute the dignity of each planet using a dignity table. And the stronger planet usually wins, and so the stronger planet is the one we'll say, oh, this party's more likely to succeed. Anyway, so this is the horoscope I drew up. You can see Cancer is on the ascendant, and it goes around. So, mundane astrology is specifically the astrology of predicting politics. So, we can use the lore of mundane astrology to tell us that the fourth house is the house of the party out of power in a parliamentary system, and the king, or the president, in a republic is represented by the 10th house. So, if we go here, we can clearly see the fourth house is represented by Libra, so this is going to represent the Democrats. And then Donald Trump will be represented by Aries. So now we look on a rulership table, and we see that Libra is ruled by Venus, and Aries is ruled by Mars. So we can use a dignity table like this one. These take a little bit to work out, but we can use that to run calculations. So Venus represents Joe Biden, represents the Democrats. Mars represents Trump. We run these calculations, and we see 2 for Biden, 1.5 for Trump. So what does that mean as regarding who's going to win? Well, 0.5 dignity is kind of a margin of error. So I would say that this is too close to call, and maybe there's an advantage, a natural advantage to Biden, but in reality, this election is going to be a 50-50 election. Now, it's interesting that both Mars and Venus are in rulership, which means the candidates are very closely aligned to their source of power, again, in the lore. So Mars is aggression, and Venus, compassion. So Trump, Mars, aggression. Biden, Venus, compassion and love. And so typically each candidate is going to be drawing from these energies, and if they want to increase their chance of winning, so goes the lore, they need to amplify their compassion or their aggression. And so from an astrological perspective, I think the first debate may have actually gone better for Trump than a lot of people said it did. And here's why. Trump really amped up his aggression throughout. And every time Biden tried to come in with his compassion shtick, Trump interfered with that. So again, from an astrological perspective, it may be that Trump did himself a big favor in that debate. Now look, again, I want to be politically neutral, but a lot of people have counted Trump out in this election cycle. There's lots of models, such as those by Nate Silverman, but there are plenty of other models that show that Trump at least has a decent shot. And I just want to point out that this is still a very plausible map for Donald Trump. The hardest state for him is probably going to be Pennsylvania. That's where the gap in the polls is the biggest. But I live here, and I can tell you that I think the polls are probably overestimating the gap. there are three areas of Pennsylvania that really went big for Trump, from Obama to Trump. And if they do so again in large enough numbers, that will be enough. I live in one of them, and uh, I was just in Luzerne County, which is another one, the other day, and Trump signs outvoted the Biden signs by 5-1. So my point is, don't count Trump out. If you're a Joe Biden supporter, don't think you've got him licked yet. If you're a Donald Trump supporter, don't give up hope, because I think that a 50-50 election is what we're looking at. So, just some other projections. So I think the Republicans are probably going to keep the Senate. I think that because both the Republican Senate and the Democrats are ruled by Venus, so naturally they're of equal strength. So it's probably going to be a push. The economy will be tepid, but not disastrous. And we can see the same line of research where you start with the second house, and then you find that, oh, the second house contains Leo. Oh, the sun rules Leo. Oh, it has a dignity of 1. Well, that's pretty weak. Public health will be disastrous. And we see this chain of reasoning and this massive negative dignity. Same thing with foreign relations. For trade and taxes, now both of these are big positive dignities, but both are Saturn. And Saturn is usually ruling violent and destructive change. So, big Saturn may not be good for foreign trade and taxes. I will say, though, that Saturn is the strongest planet in this chart, which means that violent and potentially irreversible change, destructive change, overshadows the whole event. Does that mean that the red mirage happens and then Trump uses the courts to take the election, effectively a coup? Does that mean that there will be, an escalation in violent protests? I think these are all possibilities. So, go out and vote, and take care, folks.